CAPSI podcast series, Conversations on African Philanthropy.
It's our 6th year of the African Conference on African Philanthropy. Everywhere where we go, we take the opportunity to experience the place, to experience the culture, but to also showcase the country in which we are doing the conference in. But we also use the opportunity to speak to delegates, record them for our conversations on African philanthropy. So welcome to the Conversations on African Philanthropy on the Nile River, where we are shooting some of our episodes. And in the next 5 days or so, we'll be speaking to different delegates, different actors, activists, foundations, government officials, researchers, you name it all. You want to find anything to do with African philanthropy, visit our channel on YouTube and other platforms, our Conversations on African Philanthropy. Welcome to another special edition of our Conversations on African Philanthropy with me, Bhekinkosi Moyo. We are excited to shoot this episode on the margins of the 6th African Philanthropy Conference that is held here in Cairo at the university, the American University in Cairo, hosted by the Gerhard Center on Philanthropy, Civic Engagement, and Responsible Business. I'm really excited to be joined by Nekesa Wamalwa. Anyone from Kenya who is young subscribes to the concept of agency. Mm-hmm. Do you subscribe to that?
Agency of what? Agency of change, I guess. Yeah, I think we're in an era where we can't not subscribe to that. It's too expensive to lose that opportunity. So Kenya has been, for the past 2 years, in a very, let me say, chaotic transition period. But then when it comes to the work we do, I think it's really essential for us, even as personal beings or individuals, to subscribe to that first before we get into the work.
So I think what Kenya has done with the Gen Z movement is really to offer pathways and alternatives to dealing with issues of either lack of democracy, underdevelopment, accountability issues. And I think the youth movement at the moment really showed the continent was possible. And in fact, we influenced other countries to also do the same. But what have been the benefits and the opportunities that the Gen Z movement has actually taken advantage of? And what have been some of the limitations in the process?
I think you've mentioned a word that has kind of triggered me. I'm not so sure in which way, but democracy. Because Kenya has over 47 nationalities, right? Tribes.
Yeah.
And that concept of us subscribing to one particular way of doing things, I think we tend to lose a lot of other important aspects of our culture as well. So in terms of that learning, it's really important for us to already start unlearning some of these processes in the meantime, as we are then discovering the right path, or not the right path, the path that works for us.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have been asking us, for example, in this transition period, do we have an answer to the solution? Do we have, after we get rid of the challenge, what next?
Yeah.
And I always use the example of when you are maybe in a challenging situation and you want to get out of it, do you necessarily have the answer to that? And the answer is no. All we want to do is get out of that challenge first and then figure it out, because errors will always make something a bit worse than they already are. So once we get out of that situation, I think we can better design what works, and it's okay to take that step at a time to think about.
So the challenge at the moment of being a Kenyan in the Gen Z is that wherever you go, people expect that you've got the solutions and answers for the continent. So that's the burden of being a Gen Z and a Kenyan at this point in time. But it's a good thing, right? You're a manager for youth panels at TrustAfrica. It's a fascinating concept. Youth panels. What does that represent? What does it stand for?
So the African Youth Panel, I think the difference of this panel to other panels that maybe have been formed or anything like that is that we actually went to the grassroots and picked the young people who have not gotten these opportunities. So the recruitment process for itself took us over a year to go in and contextualize with the countries, to go in and get the trust of the communities to then recommend these young people. So what I think setting up that panel in itself has already brought for us enough lessons that has contributed to the work that we want to do in regards to change and being the agents of change in this situation. So that in itself is already let me say, a really stark difference. And in terms of the numbers, like if I was to just get out...
let's talk about that. Let's unpack that whole thing in terms of the numbers, the geographic coverage.
Yeah.
But at some point, I would want us to also go deep into some of the activities. But at least to paint the picture, when somebody thinks of the word youth panel, what do they visualize?
Mostly advice,
Yeah.
or like young people giving advice.
Yeah.
It's very rare for people to think about young people actually co-creating the solutions. So that's what the panel is focused on. For example, the reason I was talking about the recruitment is because we had like numbers and targets, as everyone does. But even for us to get to like the 74% women, 50% young people without any exposure to urban settings, we have 10% young people living with disabilities, and then we have over 89% young people who've not gone to tertiary level education. Like, it's crazy. You're dealing with a lot of cultural differences, you're dealing with a lot of other things. But what we have learned, even in this journey, is to continuously trust these young people to voice the solutions that they have. Because most of the times, we would go to the ground giving solutions, but then it's very rare that we actually give them that chance to speak about their solutions.
Yeah. So let's talk about the numbers and the geographic coverage.
Oh, okay. Okay, so right now we're in 10 different countries in Africa. We have representation from West Africa, East Africa, Central, and Southern. I don't know if you want me to name the countries.
Yes, you can name them as we go.
Okay, that's fine. So I think I've also noticed that from those 10 different countries, we only have one Francophone speaking country, which is quite interesting because the dynamics are so different from the Anglophone speaking countries to the Francophone speaking countries. But each country, as we have a similar, we might have a lot of similarities, but the differences are quite stark. Like the cultural differences in Ethiopia and Tanzania, for example, are not the same differences in the other countries. Yeah.
I was going to ask you, maybe frame the question differently and say, what have you found to be the barriers for youth participation in the different contexts? But I think it's more or less what you are saying, which is that culturally, contextually, there are so many differences. But maybe let's look at what have you seen to be some of the barriers to youth participation in the different contexts. It could be partly due to colonial boundaries and experiences, but it could also be partly due to just national interests and ramifications of how the different settings have been in a way shaped by different experiences.
That's a very interesting question because the answer is very simple.
Yeah.
The first one is language.
Yeah.
Interestingly, we've carried out all our trainings and activities in the languages within the young people's communities. So even the announcements and all that. And that in itself, even from the feedback we've gotten, is already a step forward. Because most of the times we'd carry out concepts, training such as research in technical languages in English, but the young people have shown a lot of appreciation for us taking that step to carry out the trainings and other activities in their languages. The other big part is power dynamics. And it's as simple as someone, like an adult, walking into the room. It changes a lot. For us, even with the project team, with the anchor institutions and representatives we have in the countries, we are all between the ages of 18 to 35. And that in itself has removed a huge barrier for us because we fit in and we're able to understand the challenges that the young people face.
And what are the dynamics between, in that setting and in those meetings, you might be using the same language. So I saw you guys at a panel in Rwanda, and you're using the local language there. People were being trained in research methodology in local language. And I was so fascinated by that because I wanted to understand how would you define decolonial methodological approaches in Kinyarwanda, right? For example. But that as it may, the youth are not the same. And you have just mentioned the different classifications or categories. Some are living with disabilities, some are from peri-urban areas, some are, ex-convicts, etc., etc. The participation will not be at the same level. So how do you try to manage that and equalize so that by the end of the workshop or consultation, everybody lives with this feeling
that they've been treated the same, they've had equal access to the knowledge that you are providing, insights, etc.?
Okay, so one concept, I think it just came naturally, is the way the young people teach each other. Even before the trainings, like for example, someone is so interested in teaching you about their community and what they face. So even such concepts such as research or maybe how to use a new tool, we take a lot of time to go and the facilitators go to each one of them to make sure that they understand that concept. So you'll find like a very technical session. We have a translator, yes, but we have 3 other facilitators just going around. And then on the breaks, we'll have young people going to each other, asking questions, or on the group, they post, they ask questions. So that aspect in itself has helped us to be able to ensure that someone else carries another person to cross that bridge. And that's a concept that we're really pushing.
And for you personally, as the manager, you are definitely under 35 yourself, so you're part of that community. But you said there are advantages of that. One is that the power dynamics are taken care of. But what have you found to be some of the barriers or limitations for you as the manager leading these young people?
Okay, I don't think it's something new, like particularly in the career space that I've been in. I think it's the credibility that people don't give to young people. So with the young people, it's not an issue mainly. But when it comes to now approaching partners and trying to get the narrative out, it really takes a lot of convincing that you have to take a step forward to now actually, make your stance known and for you to actually give evidence every single time you approach someone. So that aspect of lack of credibility as a young person, it still stands out quite starkly. The other aspect is of being a Black woman, which is, no one really talks about it. But women face a lot of different issues that need to be mitigated before you even get the chance to get this position. So I would say that's one aspect. The other aspect maybe is sometimes when it comes to the boundaries of the young people, of course, they see you as a peer, but it's also very important to ensure that we are operating with safeguards in the question. So your role, and this is something one of the panelists said, you have to own your role. Wherever you are, you have to own your role. You cannot humble yourself or take yourself down to lose that aspect because we all have different roles to play. And if you don't play your role, then it will really mess up the ecosystem.
In fact, I was going to ask you about issues of safeguarding because one of the key policies that you need to have is a safeguarding policy when you are working with different youth, especially from the margins. What are some of the key issues that are coming out as you go to different countries and youth are meeting? What are some of those key issues that youth are really concerned about, either from a programmatic point of view, within the, the framework of your partner's strategy, which is focusing on creating dignified and fulfilling jobs for young Africans?
We do have a safeguarding policy and a framework and the risk register in place. But it's always very interesting because first they come from different communities. How someone relates in their community might not be the same way another person relates. So there's always that aspect that we always have to try and harmonize our level of engagement with each other. Secondly, the persons living with disabilities. If you're going into a community, we've done pilot research activities within the different countries. For example, you have someone living with albinism. She goes into the community, her own community. She's not taken as part of that community just because of that disability that can be seen. So it's also about us to design the tools that give them that space to be able to carry out the work. So the safeguarding policy does not only look at protecting them from what they can face, but also from them doing harm within the community. So those aspects, I think we're still working on them, but we really have been trying as much as we can to adapt as we keep going into the country.
And so far, I mean, I know the program hasn't been running for at least 3 years or so. What are the key lessons that have come out of it?
That's a very big question. One, I think the first thing that we saw in the first year is just to trust. First of all, it's very basic, but to trust the young people themselves. The aspect of putting this youth-centered approach is really important. The other thing, contextualization. All the different activities we do not look the same, which brings out the aspect that we do need to standardize, but then also need to adapt as we keep going. So that aspect of contextualization is something that I think we're still learning, but we are trying as much as we can to, put that out. The other aspect, safeguarding, of course, safeguarding and gender approaches.
Yeah.
We are working with over 75% young women, most of them teen mothers who've gone through a lot of other issues. We can't just go in and start from somewhere without accepting the experiences and histories. So how we build from that is another thing that we're still learning. And the other thing, again, is partnerships. Without the institutions in the different countries, I don't think we would have been able to do as much as we have done right now.
Yeah.
Being able to be guided by people who've also done that work within the institutions and working, within the countries, and working with them, as well as working with young people who are the national coordinators outside of those institutions for that specific aspect of making rich contributions within the country in terms of input and designing the program, I think has been a game changer for us. Because we then move out of that aspect of it being TrustAfrica and our donors doing the work, but it being owned by the people within the different countries.
Yeah. So far we've predominantly been focusing maybe more on process issues. What are the policy dimensions of the work that you are doing?
I think you need to expand a bit more. Okay,
so clearly young people are existing in a particular context and they want certain things from their governments. And there are certain acts, whether it's to do with employment, it's to do with education, etc. So the work that you are doing certainly has some policy dimensions. What do you foresee as the outcomes that might influence policy directions in the different countries? Maybe it's too early, but...
Yeah, it's just the second year, but I would say that even in terms of us accepting, first of all, that we can't do this work without it connecting to the policy aspect.
Yeah.
So even as you're doing the trainings, we're not only doing trainings on collecting data and speaking to your community, but how can you also package that value that you have to be able to present it and back it up in a group of, other people who are decision makers as well. For the young people who are interested in governance and business and all those aspects, encouraging them to go into those systems to make that change as well within those systems is one aspect. The other thing that we're talking about is closing the loop. So of course there's a policy aspect of us influencing the policy, but then also acknowledging the aspects that maybe there are gaps within that policy that we could also help in, supporting or bringing in those stakeholders at an early stage to be able to build with them as we continue. It's another thing. So I think all those dimensions are showing up now, but in a year we'll see.
Great. So you are attending this conference. Obviously, TrustAfrica is one of the partners, but you are also a participant in one form or the other. What is it with the conference that so far might have either implications for the work that you are doing, or what do you see in the conference that if young people were to be here would immediately make a big deal about?
I think, so far it's just day one for me, but I think from the different sessions I've seen outlined, there's a lot of talk on, what are we doing, what are we planning to do? But when are we going to start doing that? And I remember even one of the young people from one of the panelists was saying, if I got an opportunity to go into the AU and tell them one thing, I would be asking them what they've been talking about for all these years. Something like that it means it's time for us to act, right? So I think even for the youth sessions that we've seen on the schedule, we're really looking forward to move the narrative from us being end users and us being part of the people doing the work. Because we are a majority of the population, we can't be seen as an exception, unfortunately. So we have to get into those rooms right now. So basically, we have to start doing the work right now. And that's what we are looking to do.
What has been your experience? I hear you saying this is the first day for you, but obviously for some, they've been here for the past 2 days attending the academic conference. So your early, assessment of the platform. Is this your first time?
No, it's my second.
This is your second year, okay,
So coming into this space, I've seen a lot of familiar faces. But then I've also seen new faces who maybe are trying to also adapt into those this environment. I think the intersectionality of the conference itself has stood out, because today we're talking about faith-based philanthropy, we're talking about climate justice and all that, and all, you know, there's a lot of intersectionality. So I really appreciate that fact that we are looking away from that. I think we still have a lot of work to do when it comes to diversity, because even when we were talking about the faith-based philanthropy, there's only one person from outside the Arab, you know, and Islamic space. How can we also look at diversifying that, diversifying and including them? So not just having one person on the panel talk about it, but having a few people who can actually move the needle. So I think that's one thing that stood out for day one.
So finally, let's get to know you. For example, what prepared you to be able to do what you are doing? What's your background? What are some of the key features that really make you who you are?
It's a blend of different things. I don't think anything would have prepared me for this position if I went in one path. My background is in law, so I'm a legal and policy maybe expert on the books. But then I intentionally moved away from that to data. After my graduation, I went right into data and went into data analysis and then into investigative journalism and then back to policy. So I would say the blend of those different spaces and the passion of being young in this space has really pushed me to prepare for this, because the one thing about leading such work is that there's no blueprint to it. You lead, or rather you create it as you go. And with that comes a lot of collaboration. So you need to be able to understand different aspects that work and that blend with this kind of work. So I would say with the kind of background that I have, that is what has prepared me, but I still have a lot of learning to do as well. And I don't know if this is what I'll be doing for the next 5 years, but I'm on the right path.
Nekesa, thank you so much for making the time just to speak briefly about your work, the work that you do with the youth panels. Hopefully in the next 2 or 3 years, when the project here has come to an end or is towards its finalization, we can sit again and look at what has come out as the final products. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and I'm really excited to hear more about, to talk about the initiative once it's done its course as well.
Thank you so much. That was Nekesa Wamalwa, the manager for African Youth Panels at TrustAfrica. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.
You've been listening to the CAPSI podcast series, Conversations on African Philanthropy.